Oppo Electronics is one of the more interesting Chinese smartphone producers. Over the last couple of years, they've done a lot. The N1, N3, Find 7, R5, and now the Oppo R7. And what I really like about Oppo is that they're not afraid to be unique in how they deliver a good user experience. This is the Oppo R7, and it is the best built smartphone I've ever used. Phones made out of metal are nothing new. The HTC One series has been made out of metal for a while, the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus are made out of metal, but this isn't just another phone made out of metal. It's also worth noting now that this R7 comes in at $400, so it's competing more with the slightly less than flagship market. The Oppo R7 is made out of a magnesium aluminum alloy that's polished 48 times before it goes onto the phone. Unlike the HTC One and the iPhone 6, the R7 does not have curved edges. Instead, Oppo stuck with a sharper design. The metal edge around the side of the phone makes it really easy to grip the phone, and it just feels amazing. It's also crazy thin, so it's easy to hold on and isn't too heavy. And there's a reason that I'm stressing the build quality. It's because the build quality is hands down the best feature of the Oppo R7. It literally defines the phone. When you pick it up, you notice right away that this phone feels amazing in the hand, and the build quality literally overshadows every other aspect of the phone. Not to say the rest of the phone is bad, the build is just that good. But speaking of the rest of the phone, let's take a look. On the inside, we're looking at a quad-core Snapdragon 615, Adreno 405 GPU, 3 gigs of RAM, 16 gigabytes of storage, and a 2,320 mAh battery. Other than the beefy 3 gigs of RAM, those are pretty mediocre specs for 2015, but it runs just fine and it only costs $400. But don't underestimate the Snapdragon 615. The phone is snappy, handles multitasking well, and does hold its own under stress while gaming. The battery is alright. You'd expect it to be worse because it's pretty small, but you gotta remember the specs are not that power hungry, so it doesn't need to be as big as other phones. It only failed to last me a full day's use once in the entire week that I was using it, so that's pretty good. And if it does run out, it has included VOOC fast charging, which advertises speeds of up to 75% charge in 30 minutes or 2 hours of use after 5 minutes. And I didn't time it or anything, but I left it in the charger for an hour and I came back and it was fully charged, and that's good enough for me. Moving over to the front of the phone, there's a 5-inch 1920 by 1080p Super AMOLED display, and yes, it looks fantastic. You really only need 1080p at the 5-inch form factor, and the AMOLED display has vibrant colors and rich contrast. All in all, the display gets my approval. It's not super big and isn't super high res, but it's practical and completely usable. Right under that display are the 3 off-screen buttons. There's multitasking, home, and back. I'm not really a fan of off-screen buttons, but they are responsive enough to use without a hassle. On the right side, you have the volume rockers, on the top you have a headphone jack, and interestingly enough, on the left side you have the power button. I didn't get the chance to use the R7 as my daily driver for more than a week, so I never got fully used to the power button location, but it's not overly inconvenient to access, it just doesn't feel perfectly natural. Then on the back of the phone, you have a rear-facing speaker and camera. The rear-facing speaker is easily my least favorite part of the Oppo R7. Not only is it facing the wrong way, it doesn't sound that good in the first place, so Oppo, if you're looking to improve upon the R7 for the next gen, start there. The camera is a 13 megapixel shooter and sports an interesting square design. The photos look good, but the phone struggles a bit in low light, mostly because of the heavy post-processing. You can see some sample photos on screen right now. It does feature some cool modes like GIF and Ultra HD pictures, but those are just cool modes. They're not really good tools that I would use often. And lastly, the front-facing 8 megapixel shooter is more than you'll ever need for selfies. There's only one thing left that really needs to be talked about, and that is software. It's running ColorOS over Android 4.4 KitKat, and I don't like it. I can look past the different designs and layouts, and I can sort of look past the older non-material design Android beneath the hood, but I can't get over the lack of an app drawer. At this point with Android phones, an app drawer is a must. I don't want my home screens to be cluttered with all the apps. The drawer is something that Android has always had over iOS, and I think it was a very poor decision to leave it out. You can easily change the look of the device with the theme store, but being a big fan of stock Android, it still just doesn't feel right. That's about all I have for the Oppo R7. It's a really well-built phone that's pretty well-rounded and only costs $400, but it's held back by a rear-facing speaker, a pretty heavy skin over an older version of Android, and a mediocre battery life. Thank you for watching, subscribe to see more content, and as always, stay classy.